Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Zone Star State podcast. I'm Matthew Brune, and joining me once again is Ishmael Johnson, ready to support his Notre Dame Fighting Irish tonight on Monday, January 20th. Ish, how you doing?
Doing good, doing good. I was mentioning this is probably the most calm I'll be as far as a team goes. A favorite team of mine playing for a championship goes. Notre Dame's understandable underdog. Ohio State has felt like the team to beat all year, except for those weird one-off losses that they've had. So it's
Right.
like, if this is when it all comes crumbling down, I'm okay with it.
Exactly. Um, I don't want to say it was a slower week, but
Yeah.
there were a couple games, but we're gonna do some mid-season kind of coach of the year. I don't want to say debate,
Mhm.
update, kind of where we have some of the top coaches in the state right now, and then an update on the conference title races across the state with who we have as contending for a conference championship, which
Mhm.
is the mark that that's regardless of if a Southland team wins a conference tournament or an NCAA tournament game or not. If you win the conference title, it is a very successful year. So we'll get to all of that, but first, we do have one game to talk about, and it is TCU beating Baylor 74-71 in Waco. And
Mhm.
this would be an easy opportunity for us to further our point about Baylor not being the team that we want them to be at this
Mhm.
point. But I think for me, I want to take it from the TCU perspective of saying this is really, really impressive.
Yeah.
And Jamie Dixon they're now 3-3 in the Big 12.
Mhm.
If they can like 500 ball or maybe a little over 500, like they could be fighting for a tournament spot. And that's not something that I expected to be saying here on January 20th. So I do want to give them their full credit here.
Yeah. No, I agree. This is a game that we're gonna look at TCU for what they are. I think, right? We kind of figured this would be a team that's more or less laying the foundations of what they'll be under Jamie Dixon next year, and in maybe the last couple of years of his career, coaching career. But we know that he's not necessarily coaching the best version of this team this year. And I think we were going to look at teams that play TCU, especially like the Houstons, the Texas Techs, and we thought the Baylors as, oh, this is a game that they should win. This is a game that it should be a good test, but regardless, they should be favored. Um, and that's not what happened with Baylor. They let me make this clear. Baylor was up for a good chunk of this game. Like
Hmm.
they stretched it to about 10, I think. Um, and even at that point, it never felt like they were controlling too much of it. I think they eventually went into the half with like a 8 point, 7 point lead or something like that. And we saw everything that we've had issues with come back with this Baylor team. They could not get a single stop when they
Hmm.
needed to, particularly in that second half. They needed literally down to the last shot, literally down to the last shot. They needed
Yep.
one stop, and it never felt like they were able to really get a comfortable enough lead to where they could let their foot off the gas defensively. Now, offensively, that's what they were hinging themselves on. TCU was struggling defensively as well, and so okay, they were able to get some buckets on that end. But I think where TCU was able to eventually uh, uh, pull away was the or sorry, where Baylor was able to stay in the game as far as the lead was concerned was turnovers, right?
Hmm.
TCU kept turning the ball over a ton,
Yeah, 17.
and yeah, 17 turnovers. And so, but regardless, they couldn't get consistent stops to when they weren't turning the ball over, and eventually it just led into kind of a snowball effect of okay, TCU is just going to come back into this game very slowly and eventually take the lead with like 3 minutes to go. And we can talk about the last shot in a bit, but I think that last shot was like a good summary of like Baylor's issues this year.
I'm they have a lot of issues, and it's funny listening to Fran Fraschilla,
Mhm,
talk on the game because obviously he has a very smart basketball mind, and
mhm.
every Baylor game is the same because he's like they switch 1 through 5, and sometimes it works, but a lot of times it gets them beat. They have the guard on the big and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And he's right. And then they go to that 1-3-1 zone,
Mhm.
and look, they have to have some statistics backing it up that make they're like, doing X amount, better in the zone or something. But just watching it, it does not look like it is stopping anybody.
No.
Like TCU carved it up in the second
Mhm.
half, and
Mhm.
TCU won the game, like you said, when Baylor went to a 1-3-1 zone. They got in the paint, they collapsed it. The way
Mhm.
Scott Drew described it after the game was like, he was a little off balance. We wanted him to shoot that shot in the mid range, which I understand.
Mhm. Mhm.
But then, because you're in a zone and it was broken down, they kicked it out to a shooter and they hit the three to win the game.
Yeah.
Like Brandon Wetzel hits a three to win the game, and
Mhm.
that's just what happens. That's why I don't understand how you're in a zone in that situation. Um, but that's kind of just where I'm at. Is they don't have any answers on
Yeah.
defense. They switch, they try to play zone. I don't know what the answer is, but like TCU, full credit to them. 24 points in the last 10 minutes, shot 57% from 2, 39% from 3. Like you said, the turnovers were the only thing stopping them. So um, we knew this TCU team had like some offensive punch, like it could get going with Alette and Wenzel and so on.
Mhm.
But yeah, I just struggle to watch Baylor lose that lead and just never really feel like they were going to be able to win this game despite having like a 12-point lead, like you said.
Yeah. I think it seemed like almost that they were gonna sneak away with this game too, because um they had a great blob set, I think, for the Jaden Nunn shot that tied it.
Yeah. And
And
before that, they were down, was it 5, and then they
yeah.
scored and got a stop and then hit it. Yeah, like you said, hit the baseline out of bounds for
Mhm.
3. So they already like pulled off a comeback, and I thought I was like, man, they're gonna go overtime. They're gonna pull this out somehow.
Yeah.
And
And I think also, I didn't know if Scott Drew mentioned, I mean, Jeremy Roach had that nasty collision towards the end of the
yeah,
game. So, like, he went to the, I don't think he didn't finish the game. He went to the locker room. Um, we'll see what happens there, because, like, I don't know. Again, he hasn't been great this year, but, like, that's still some, they played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 players. So, like,
also Celestine was back in this game,
yes,
so
he
no,
was.
and he hit some shots. He didn't play a ton, 16 minutes, but he was back at
Yeah.
least.
Yeah. And so, like, okay, like if Jeremy Roach is out, like that's a lot more Rob Wright coming, right, as
Mhm.
a freshman. So okay, a small lineup already gets smaller. But you mentioned that last possession, and I think that's a perfect summary of this Baylor team where 1-3-1 zone, give or take, right? When done well, conceptually, it's supposed to stop the corner threes,
Yeah.
right? Like it's supposed to widen the kind of the high post area and have that option to stop the corners. And they try. I don't know if they tried to like draw a charge almost on the last possession or
It was
something,
weird.
but defender cheats over. And I couldn't remember who it was. I can't remember if it was right. Cheats over, doesn't get the charge. Obviously, they're not going to make a call like that unless it's obvious. And then the defender on the right wing, or the right wing, reaches over and then just leaves the corner open, and boom, like you can't. To me, you can't get beaten on drive and kick three in a 1-3-1 zone. Like that is like the concept of the 1-3-1 zone or zone defense in general, to stop collapsing the defense, right? And it was easily baited, and he went for the steal, and he ended up giving up the corner, and boom, there it is, and that was it. And then Jaden Nunn couldn't even get off a shot on the other end because it was blocked, and so it feels like, I think what's disappointing about this too is that the arena was still great. Like that was
Yep.
still a great environment. This team, even despite disappointing, like this team is still putting together good fan support. And now, like, I mean, I never thought we'd be talking about Baylor unranked this year, and they should be. I
Yep.
mean, the fact that they were still ranked heading into this game was crazy to
Mhm.
me, but they're going to be unranked, and I don't know, barring a miracle run, how they get back into the top 25 at this point.
Mhm. Yep. I don't see it either. Does it come out today or tomorrow? It comes out today, right? Yeah.
It
Baylor
should be.
is now unranked
Yeah.
and only received 4 votes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And like
that's
based on how they played this year, like I don't, barring a run that's unlike anything they've been this year, right? I'm talking like I'm looking at this stretch of Kansas, Texas Tech, UCF, Houston. Like they need to win like 3 of those games, right? Like in order to in order for them to prove that they are consistently a top 25 team, and they're just not this year. I don't think.
Yeah, like they could very well slip to like, let's say, like they're gonna make the tournament, but it's like, all right, you make the tournament, but you're now like an 8 seed, a 9 seed, and then you got to play Lord knows who in the second round, like if you even
Yeah.
win the first. So
Let me see
it's
their resume. I'm just looking at their resume real quick just to see.
yeah, go ahead. I mean, their best. I mean, they beat St. John's and
Mhm.
Arkansas, but like in terms of, they'll have opportunities in the Big 12.
Man,
So
it's not a great. Right now they have Torvik has them as a similar resume to Missouri, Butler, TCU, Seton Hall. Um,
yeah, let's see the late or bracketology from Joel Lenardi from the 17th. So not updated with the loss.
yeah,
Had them at a 7 seed, and that's before that loss.
yeah. They only have one. Currently, they only have two quadrant one wins. They're 2-5 in quadrant one games. Like
Yeah.
that's a fight. And then Torvik has them projected only to win one more, which I think is probably yeah. I mean, it's gonna be an uphill climb.
Yeah. So we'll see. But yeah, TCU on the other hand, their resume is still not quite good enough.
Yeah.
I went and looked at it and I forgot that they had lost like to Vanderbilt and Santa Clara and
Mhm.
Colorado State and whatnot, and Utah at home last. Like this is a bad loss for Baylor. Really, really
Yeah,
bad
it
loss.
really is. Like I'll say, like I mentioned, this is going to be a team that's a TCU team that is going to get some people right, but at the end of the day, this is still a team that's a win away or a year
Mm,
away. I think Torvik has them at they have them at like 5% to make the tournament. So
yeah. All right. Let's move on to coach of the years halfway
mm,
through the season, mid-season coach of the year race. I have a couple candidates on both sides.
mhm,
I'll throw them out there. You can respond or add, because on the men's side I only have 2,
mhm,
and I'm interested to see if you add anybody or if you want to add anybody to this. Right now, I only have I don't have Kelvin Sampson, so let's just get that out of the way. If you want to add Kelvin Sampson, we can.
mhm.
But Andy Enfield and Joe Golden are my 2 right now.
Really,
Who am
you
I
wouldn't have
forgetting?
McCaslin in that discussion.
No, I don't
Okay,
think so.
okay.
I don't think so.
I think those two. I think it's those two with a little shout to McCaslin, in my opinion.
I
I
think
agree on those two.
McCaslin is worthy. So at this point, the way I treated this and why
Mhm.
Sampson is also kind of a little bit left out here is because I'm just trying, like, just based on your resume through whatever everyone's played, like, 17, 18 games, right?
Yeah, yeah.
To this point, McCaslin, they did just have the Arizona win since our
Mhm.
last podcast. They beat Arizona at home by 16.
Yeah.
Really, really good win.
Mhm.
That's by far their best win of the year. Before
Yeah.
that, we had talked about it. They didn't play anybody in the non-conference really. They lost to
Sure, sure.
A&M, lost to UCF, lost to Iowa State. So I was struggling to really get over that hump. The Arizona win is good, and if they reel off some, which is a very real possibility because they have 4 straight, I think, winnable or 3 straight winnable games here before Houston.
Mhm.
We could be looking at a 7-2 Texas Tech team, and they could end the year. Campbell has them 13-7. Like that,
Mhm.
that could put him in the race for our coach of the year discussion. But right now, 4-2, 13-4 overall. Again, not a ton of huge wins there. I would leave him out.
Okay.
Houston, I think Sampson is interesting, but he kind of falls in the same umbrella where it's at this point in the year, they're 14-3. They could end the year
Yeah.
hell 28-3, but right now they're 14-3. I need to see them, beat one of like Kansas or Iowa State or so on, and then I'll put him in that discussion. But yeah, I would leave those 2. So then you get to the 2 candidates that I said, Joe Golding, um, and Andy Enfield.
Mhm.
Which one do you want to start with here? How would you rank those 2? Like, would you go Golding or
Yeah.
Enfield or
I think I'd go Enfield
okay?
because I think Golding mean, it's hard because I think this is definitely, Golding's obviously their best year.
Yeah.
But I also think there's some semblance of not like not being surprised, but like they made the title game last year, right? The Conference USA title
Hmm.
game. So it was like this is kind of what we hoped for, right? Like this is kind of in my opinion, this is the best version of that. But this is what I hoped for from a team that was making, being in their fourth, fifth year under Golding,
Fourth, I think. Yeah.
coming off of a title game appearance, right? This is the momentum I hope to see from them. There's still something to be said about them actually doing it. But with SMU, I did not see this at all. Like, I did not see them being competitive in the ACC at all. Right. And what I mean by competitive, I mean, they're better than competitive, right? I expected them to be like marginally, like maybe above 500,
Hmm.
maybe, right? Um, but they're very much
Like a top
in.
five team in the ACC this year.
Yeah, like I mean, and again, Duke is where they are, and North Carolina. That was, I'd probably say that was their most disappointing performance of the year. But outside of those two, yeah, like if they come out and beat Louisville, if they come out and beat,
That's
I wish Pitt was a closer game. That's not till like mid-February, but
yeah.
I didn't expect them to be with those teams, right? Louisville's obviously taking a step forward, but I didn't expect them to be with those teams at all right now. I thought this would be a proof of concept year with Andy Enfield as he recruits and gets people, gets them in NIL discussions with big time recruits and all that. And then next year's the big year. And it's like, oh no, this year's like they're pretty damn good. What are they top? Yeah, they're top 40 in KenPom right now.
Yeah.
And at one point, I'm trying to think, were they higher than that? They might have just been hovering around there, but you
They
get
were
what I'm
hovering
saying.
around there for a bit.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, the win over Miami, Ken Palm loves when you blow out bad teams.
Oh yeah,
Um,
they
and they beat them by 43.
yeah.
And so that shot him up a good amount there. But yes, I do agree. In terms of like even the ACC at the bottom is not great, sure, but
Mhm.
we'll have to see how if they beat Louisville, if they beat, like you said, Pitt, Wake Forest is tricky, so on. But at this moment, I think he's done more than enough. 14-4, 5-2 in conference. You take that all day. And I don't think this is a great roster that he's working with. I think this is a good roster, but I don't think this is great. I like Boopy Miller. I don't love him. I
Mhm.
like Chuck Harris and BJ
Yeah.
Edwards and Oquendo and um Igatoglu and Matt Cross, but like that's not a roster that I expected to get to,
Mm.
that I would expect to get to the NCAA tournament. Right now, again, let's go back to the bracketology from Joe Lenardi 3 days ago. He had them as next four out. So they're in the conversation at least. And then,
Mhm.
like I said, in the ACC, there are some like games where you play teams outside the top 100, but if they can beat one of Louisville or Pitt and pick up another marquee win, we're talking about potentially a tournament team.
Yeah.
And
Right.
that would, I think, secure him. Like if they make the tournament, I struggle to see anybody displacing him for this Coach of the Year
Yeah.
discussion.
Right.
Now
I
Golding, I think you kind of laid it out. This is what we were. I think the struggles of the past couple years maybe excited me more about this team than
Mhm.
anything.
Mhm.
Um, Not to say we shouldn't be excited about this team, but because they had disappointed us the past couple years, it's
Mhm.
like, okay, they're finally got it together and they're doing it. They're doing it now. Everything's coming together. 4-1 in conference. Um, I'll say this, so if they win the conference, Golding has an incredibly strong case as well.
Yeah.
In the regular season, they're 4-1. They beat Liberty. They
Beat
just
La
beat
Tech.
FIU. And so now they have a stretch of winnable games before they play Liberty again in a bit. And so, yeah, Golding definitely deserves to be in this conversation because I like his roster, and if they can, I don't think they should be expected to win the conference, but if they're
Right.
just in that top 2 or 3 in a very good Conference USA, then I think it's a huge win for UTEP.
Yeah. No, that's where I'm at. If they win the conference, I think he's it takes it. I'll say that the there was a ceiling, even with how good UTEP's been, or I expected them to be or hoped they would be. There was a sense of they're not going to be as good as Liberty, right? They're not going to
Yeah.
be as good as La Tech.
Yep.
and they have been. They've beaten both those teams. So it's like, okay, like there is a sense of surpassing expectations to some extent with these Utah teams too. So I don't want to make it seem like that they're just all, doing what they should have been doing or whatever.
For sure. Let's to the women's side, there's nobody else on the men's, I don't think. And of course, Corpus Christi 6-1. We'll get into all these other, teams in the next segment. But on the women's side, I have 3 names here. Let me know if you want to add any. There's one, I'm open to adding a couple, but Karen Aston, UTSA, Mark Campbell, TCU, and I'm still throwing Jason Burton in there from North Texas. Those 3 now. Aqua Franklin is 7-0 at Lamar, so I have no problem putting her in there. It's probably voter fatigue on my end because they've been good for so long and they haven't lost. They've just keep winning and they have the same team as last year and so on. So you could throw her in there if you want. I think for me though, who would you have right now from those 3 as the winner?
I think it's Campbell.
Yeah,
I think it's Mark Campbell. I think it could have been Campbell last year if they don't get hurt. Right. If all those players don't get hurt, like I think we're talking about that because they still won 20 games with that roster. So like, yeah, I think it goes Campbell and Aston 1-2 for me. And then Burton would be more of, he basically won it last year from us. And so that'd be more of a voter fatigue thing, but, he's in that discussion regardless of how they've maintained what they've done. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else. I don't think right now Aqua Franklin, yes, is definitely a voter fatigue thing. I don't think there's anybody right now that stands out as like somebody we're missing, right? Because I feel like a lot of every other team,
Colin, Schaefer.
like they're either like about where we thought they'd be, or a little bit worse, or like a lot worse. Like so that's kind of how the state of the rest of the state is in women's basketball. Yeah, I think those are it. I think those are it.
Yeah. We'll get Burton versus Aston
Yep.
in a couple weeks, so we'll be able to hash that out. But I do agree, Campbell is the pick for me. You add Haley Van Lith.
Yeah.
And
I mean, he might be national coach of the year at this point. Like, he's probably going to be national coach of the year.
Yeah, it's like him and the Notre Dame coach. I actually just read an ESPN article of their midseason awards, whatever projections or whatever, and it was a lot of it was Notre Dame as well.
Yeah.
But still, for him to seamlessly add Van Lith the way that they did, and to do this without Maddie Scher, who we thought was going to be a big piece as well. Not a ton of depth, but a ton of top end talent, and they've been tremendous. So they should win the conference. We'll see if they do. But all right, let's talk about some conference title races before we get out of here. We'll go back and forth between men and women. Just go conference by conference. Big 12 men, we have Houston at 6-0. We have Texas Tech at 4-2. I'm going to include them here, even though I don't think they can win the Big 12. Texas Tech, because you still have Iowa State 5-1. Arizona's 5-1 as well. But Houston should run away with this, right? Like if you had to put a percentage on it, I don't know. I'd probably put it like 50, 60%, something like that, because Iowa State's still there. But I think
Iowa State's still there, which again, this is kind of they got like the best draw of any of the teams in the Big 12. They don't play anybody good until this Saturday against Kansas. So
you're talking about Houston.
Houston, right? Yeah. So I'd probably put it at 40, just because I still want to give some credence to Iowa State. I think they only get them once. Yeah, that's insane.
And at home, right?
And at home, yeah, that's insane. So I'll give them 40%, but that means like I think it's 20% Iowa State, then like the rest, divide the rest up to whatever extent. So schedule wise, the way they've played against the teams that at the top, like Alabama, Auburn early in the year, I think it's theirs to lose for sure. Obviously, you want to give a sniff to teams like Texas Tech, technically, but I just think that there's a gear that Houston can hit. And I mean, honestly, only Houston and Iowa State have shown to play at. So, and I feel like we've seen Tech's best. Again, granted, it almost beat Iowa State, but I feel like we've seen Tech's best, and it still wasn't quite enough to pull out the win.
Yeah. Houston scared us over the weekend. Almost lost to UCF on the road.
Yeah.
Ends up winning Jawan Roberts on a
UCF's like sneaky okay this year. Like
UCF.
UCF, they beat A&M to start the year, and ever since then they've been like an okay team.
Keyshawn Hall is very good, and they all got our boy Jordan Ivy Curry over
Yeah,
there.
yep. He's back on the trail.
Shout out to JIC.
He's hit
That's
both coasts now. I just realized that because he went to Pacific, and then he went back to he was UTSA, Pacific, back to UTSA, and then UCF.
It was a pit stop. He didn't want to make the whole
layover.
Trip. He didn't want to make the whole trip across country in 1 year, so made a quick pit stop. Big 12 women, like we talked about, TCU 7-0. Baylor is 6-1.
Yeah.
Here, they don't play for. Or actually, hold on. I had it written down. They play on the 26th, so next Sunday. So we'll be able to talk about that fresh next Monday. Kansas State is still 7-0 though, so I think those are your clear top three. Oklahoma State is 5-2, West Virginia is 5-2, but I think it's gonna be Kansas State, TCU, or Baylor potentially.
Yeah, basically, I'm Baylor's kind of the team that I feel like we're not talking about just because I don't know what to really talk about. Like I don't really know how to process them right now. You know, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It still feels like they're a team that does not have quite enough to like take as a true conference contender. Because all the same issues, not all the same exact issues, but they don't have the inside presence, and that's kind of what's going to divide the top teams in the Big 12.
I was sorry to cut you off. I was not watching this today. I was working, but they did just lose to UCLA 72-57. About like if you asked me to project the score between these two, I might have said like this like 75-60.
Yeah.
So this is not a surprise. Like the spread was 13.5. So they pretty much right on the money, exactly what we expected. Like you said, I don't put them in that top conversation.
Yeah.
We'll see if that changes. They play TCU on the road in a week.
TCU, I mean, they're right now TCU, at least according to Torvik, +8. And then Iowa, Kansas State. Again, these aren't Vegas spreads; these are just their projection spreads. Yeah. And then Kansas State at the end of the year, they are +13 or 14. So they are very much saying that there's a top, and then Baylor's somewhere in that squishy middle.
Exactly. And I know Texas is playing Maryland right now. I do not have my phone. I could probably look it up. On there, just to see what the score is because I'm interested.
Right.
Oh, I see it.
Oh, hello.
We're back. We're back. Scrap the rest of the pod.
Oh my God.
Texas is up 42-18 on Maryland. Yeah, there you go.
That's the good stuff.
There you go.
He's got Brenda Freese in a chokehold right now.
into my veins.
Sleeper.
Right into my veins right there, Texas. That's what I needed. I love it. Texas is, I think it's, first of all, South Carolina, also Texas, SEC is our next one to go to here.
Yeah.
Speaking of them, South Carolina is so far ahead.
Hold on, this cannot be real. Hold on, sorry, keep going. I'm trying to find this box score, and I'm like, this cannot be. I'm not looking at the right one.
It said 42-18.
No. Sorry, I'm trying to look at the stats, the actual stats. Go on, keep going. I think the one on Google, the one that you pull up with Google, I think is like.
Okay, I don't see anything crazy. I have the stats up here. Booker 20, Holly 7.
Okay, see, that's what it was. It came up as assists for me when it said 20, and I was like, that's fake. I was like, that's formatted wrong. Basically, what went through my head.
Madison Booker 20 assists when Texas has 40 points.
I was about to say, what is happening?
We're cooking.
Anyway, sorry, go on.
Can Texas win the SEC? No.
Nah. Look, that's fine, man. Like, there's only like 4 teams that can beat South Carolina right now.
If Texas wasn't any other conference, maybe not the Big Ten. I don't know. Maybe not. They
could probably win. I mean, UCLA is really
UCLA is the only one. But South Carolina just beat Oklahoma by 40.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we understand the difference in caliber here. When I saw that score, I said, okay. And the thing about South Carolina, I said it before.
Yeah.
They've got Texas at home. They played Oklahoma at home, and they get LSU at home. Yeah. So, they're not losing those games. They're not losing at South Carolina against these teams. Like, if it was at LSU or at Texas, then maybe they'd have a puncher's chance, but you don't have a chance beating South Carolina at South Carolina. So
I mean, it always goes back to the fact that if Malaysia Fulwiley was on Texas, she'd be their second best player. She comes off the bench for South Carolina, right? It comes back to the fact that Malaysia Fulwiley is gonna go against Shea Holly, right? She's gonna go against the twos a lot of the time, and it's like that's unfair.
Yeah.
That's an unfair thing, right? She's probably a top 3 player on South Carolina, but they don't need her to be.
Their bench outscored their starting lineup against Oklahoma.
Yeah, yeah. Like if you ask me right now, like Tahina Pau or Malaysia Fulwiley, like I'm taking Malaysia Fulwiley, but Tahina Pau starts, right? Like so, it's like
well, it's the same thing as like Joyce Edwards off the bench.
Right. Exactly. Joyce Edwards is the same exact way. It's like, okay, cool. Like if she starts on, she's good enough to start on Texas. She would start on Texas. And she comes off the bench because it's fine. She likes the Raven Johnson, Chloe Kitts, Spree Hall.
Yeah,
there you go. That little trio, and it's like, okay, fine. I guess you can come off the bench, and they're all cool with it because they all know they're gonna all play 20 to 25 minutes, every single one of them, and it's unfair. And sometimes you just gotta throw your hands up and say, I don't know, man. If you don't have a Lauren Betts, like you're probably not beating this team.
If you're Texas, root for LSU to somehow win that game, but I don't think it's gonna happen. So
look, Texas could be like a 2 seed without winning this conference. Like
look, Texas, you got the win over Oklahoma.
Yep.
I don't know who they played twice in the conference, but whoever it is,
it's South Carolina.
Oh yeah, we talked.
They play South Carolina. I think they get them. Luckily, they get them early in the month, so like I think they get them in early February, so they can just erase that and just move on. But
I was gonna say just worry about the LSU game, but you have to play South Carolina twice. So if you lose twice,
you got to get them beats twice.
It doesn't matter. All right, moving on. We don't have SEC men because Texas and A&M. I didn't include them. I don't think they have a shot at all of winning.
Yeah, no, I mean SEC stacked this year, man. Like it's one of those years where it's like, look, there's like 7 teams. There's 7 teams that could win, or there's 7 teams that are in contention. But like you look at it, it's like there's 3 or 4 teams that can win that.
Yeah. And this is like I said, I think A&M's probably best team, but it's not going to matter. Now in the tournament it'll matter, but not in SEC play. All right, AAC. North Texas is 4-1 here. The only loss is to Memphis, and Memphis just lost to Temple. So you have Temple 4-1, Memphis 4-1, North Texas 4-1. North Texas does not play Memphis again. I think there is a realistic chance here with the inability for Memphis to show up for every single game that we've seen under Penny Hardaway. There's a real shot that they just slip up a couple times and they go like 14-4, and North Texas just grinds their way to 15-3. Like I think there's a shot at that happening. I don't think like it's a greater than 40% chance, but I think there is a shot of like, oh, Memphis just randomly doesn't show up against fill in the blank and they lose. So it's like,
No, I agree. This game against Temple is going to be very, very telling. We'll see how Temple was able, like you mentioned, Temple was able to kind of nip Memphis in the bud there and kind of emerge as a pretty big contender. So it's like, okay, like let's see what this Temple team really is. UNT's, they've shown the ability to beat all of these teams, right? Of course, they lost to Memphis, I know, but like that was a close game. So like I wouldn't put it against them. They're very much in this race. I would still probably put, if I had to put money down, I'd probably still put Memphis just because eventually the talent. I think this year is one of those years where the talent's just that good. But this is still very much a UNT team that can win this conference.
Yeah. North Texas is currently second in the AAC in offensive rating in terms of offense only. So they are hooping. All right, to the women's, UTSA 7-0, North Texas 6-1. It's pretty cut and dry here. I think these are by far the best 2 teams. Like USF has kind of fallen off a bit, and I don't cover USF, so I can't tell you what's wrong with them. But they're 5-2 now, so it's not like a huge fall off. But Temple's 5-1, USF's 5-2, and then you have our 2 Texas teams here who play in a couple weeks. And I mean, they're incredibly well coached. They have a dominant big, and they just play really, really good basketball. So I think if one of those two doesn't win the conference, I'll be surprised.
Same. And I think I'm going to go UTSA on this one. They've answered a lot of questions about that I had heading into this year about who replaces. They didn't have a lot of player wise, they didn't have a lot of absences or a lot of losses, but they had contribution wise some pretty big losses. So, yeah, I mean, they've kind of maintained their rebounding identity, and I think at the end of the day, I think that size is going to be the size depth and the emergence of Adar Udo is going to be a big factor in that game against UNT coming up. So, yeah, I'm going to go UNT or UTSA right now, but it's going to be a 1-2 finish, and I'm so excited for that game coming up.
Next up, Conference USA men's UTEP. Our boys, like we talked about, Joe Golding has them in contention right now. They did lose to New Mexico State by like 30, which was crazy. New Mexico State is also 4-1. So you have New Mexico State, UTEP, and Middle all at 4-1. Louisiana Tech being 2-4 is probably the most shocking part of all this. We haven't talked a lot about Sam Houston State, but they've been one of the more disappointing teams. In the state. They're 1-5 right now. A team that we thought was at least going to be competitive with Lamar Wilkerson and company. But UTEP, it's not fool's gold. They definitely are a good team.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know what I expect from them. Like, I don't expect them to be this contender. And maybe I'm just still behind. I
mean, if I'm being honest, this might be a New Mexico State year. It feels like that. I think they're number one in both offense and defense in the conference. Jason Hooten, as we know, he knows how to coach, man. We're seeing, I thought I liked the Chris Mudge hire, but we're kind of showing that, okay, maybe Sam Houston isn't a continual thing after Chris Hooten or Jason Hooten leaves. I don't know, man. They look really good this year. I think what's their only loss? Their only loss is to Liberty, who UTEP beat. So again, there's some bona fides for UTEP there. It's a 3-team race seemingly right now, and I think UTEP's in it. But like you, I do wonder. Every year, there's something that just bites UTEP, right? And previous years has been the outside shooting. This year, it's been a lot better. Don't get me wrong, but their defense has sneakily not been great this year.
Correct.
And
that's been the trade-off.
It's been the trade-off where it's like they're the best they've ever been offensively under Golding. Honestly, it was one of his best teams offensively, I think, that he's had, even going back to ECU. But it's at the cost of their defense. Their effective field goal percentage defense is 10th right now in the conference. They're 53, almost 54% effective field goal percentage allowed.
Yeah.
Is that something that comes back to bite them? I think it did against New Mexico State.
Yeah. New Mexico State is first on offense and defense right now. Yeah. Ken Palm has the winner, like 3 teams at 11-7, and then UTEP at 10-8 projected. I think that's about right. Like, I think they'll finish that 3-4 range somewhere.
Yeah.
Southland men, a really interesting competition there. For second, mostly McNeese is going to win it again. They're just better than everybody. But A&M Corpus Christi 6-1, Lamar is 5-3. I believe Corpus Christi plays McNeese next Monday, if I'm not mistaken. So if anyone's going to clip them, maybe it'll be our boys in Corpus Christi. But that's a really good year for Corpus Christi. If you can rattle off some wins and just see what happens in the conference tournament, right? Like, that's just what you got to see. And then Lamar at 5-3. Lamar's been up and down, might not be the right word, but they've definitely haven't been as consistent as I thought they were going to be going into the season. They are 5-3 with their losses to they lost to SFA, they lost to New Orleans, and then they lost to McNeese. So it's
we want to talk about disappointing teams. SFA is right at the top of that.
I was just like, SFA is terrible. But like, how do you lose to those teams at home? I don't know. Like, Lamar right now should be 7-1 and not 5-3. So that's the only disappointing thing there, but I did want to include them in this conversation. But ultimately, it's probably just going to be McNeese. So don't even sweat it too much. The women's side, Lamar is 7-0. We know that.
Yep.
I want to include Incarnate Word in here. They're 5-3.
Yeah, sure.
So
Let's keep him in there.
thumbs up for Incarnate Word. Aqua Franklin is Aqua Franklin, and their team is very, 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 very good. Southeastern is 8-0, and we talked about going into the season. Those were the top 2 teams. I don't know when they play. I think it's in a few days or so. But that'll be one to watch for conference championship implications. The SWAC. Yes, we have SWAC. We have not talked about them because the men's side of a SWAC for Texas with EV and Texas Southern has let us down consistently the past 2 years. But Texas Southern women are 5-0 now ish, and they beat Jackson State, and we know Jackson State is a annual, I don't want to say powerhouse, but usually winning the SWAC. They beat them 5-0. I'm just glad we have a SWAC team that is in contention right now. That's what I'm happy about.
Seriously.
It's been a long time.
On the women's side, has been seemingly forever. There was the one year, I think, that Cynthia Cooper Dyke was like the head coach, and that was like she ended up leaving, but it was like her first year, and that was like the only year since they've been anywhere near the contention. So shout out Vernetsky and Texas Southern, especially because Vernetsky was also, again, I'm not saying it's like, oh, they made a mistake or anything, but she was a Gary Blair assistant at A&M, a longtime Gary Blair assistant. And again, it's one good year right now, so I'm not saying like, oh, A&M, what are you thinking of? But like, it's got to feel pretty good for you to be doing pretty well in UC and A&M, what's going on there. So,
Joni Taylor, watch out! Watch out! It's just saying
they go dancing. We got some conversations.
Someone set the spread for Texas A&M, Texas Southern right now. I shouldn't say that because A&M has a couple of SEC wins now, so we can't.
I'm not saying they've actually done decently.
They're not the worst team in
decently
the SEC
compared to what we thought. So
yes, they're like 2-5 or 2-4. So surpassed our expectations. And finally, UTA women 3-1. The men are not 3-1. I'll tell you that.
No.
That's another very disappointing team.
It's tough. They lost everybody after last year.
They did.
Basically, everybody just looked at their roster as like a shopping list and was like, "Ooh, let's see what KT Turner's got over there," and they just started plucking the roster. So
the women are 3-1. Grand Canyon, who is becoming one of the best mid-major teams in the country, is 4-0 and 17-2 and has won 15 straight games. So I don't think UTA is going to win the conference, but I wanted to give them a shout out nonetheless for a 3-1 start. And they've always been on our radar, UTA, especially with Avery Brittingham this year and company. So we've liked this roster, Zoe Nelson as well. So a couple of familiar faces here. But we'll see how it goes. They did just lose to Utah Valley. They don't play Grand Canyon until late. They play them twice in February, so we'll see. But yeah, want to give them one shout out as well. And Ish, I think we've kept you long enough. Do you have a ritual? Do you have a pregame routine? Do you wear green, or do you have anything that you do?
No. See, I'm very anti. Once the game starts, I'm gonna be a wreck, right? But up until that, I don't do rituals. I don't do anything. My only ritual for any team that I care about playing in a big game is I have to watch it alone. Because I'm a miserable. Ask my girlfriend. We went to Nashville the year the Suns made the finals a couple years ago, and I think they were up. That was when they were up 2-0, and they lost game 4, and so it was tied 2-2, and I was miserable. We got there that day, and I was like, "Hey, we can do anything after the game, whatever, but we gotta see the game." And we didn't do anything after the game. we stayed in the Airbnb, and I was like, I'm not going anywhere. So
the hard part about the only team I'm a diehard for is the Spurs.
Sure.
Like I used to be a Cowboys fan. I can't do it. I just know. But anyways, the Spurs, and now that the Spurs are back to being good again, or not good, but they have expectations.
They're fun to watch. They're competitive again. Yeah.
Now that they're somewhat expectations, I remember what it's like to be just angry.
You watch a bad loss. Yeah.
Teenage me going through the, let's just say 2011 to 2017 years.
Yep.
Again, same thing. I had to watch it by myself. I was like living and dying, and now I had like a 4 or 5 year reprieve where it's like, we're just not good. We're
Yeah.
tanking, whatever.
Yeah.
Now it's like, oh, we just lost to the Heat last night, gave up 45 and a quarter, and I want to jump off my balcony. It's like, no.
This is, I mean, like, that was me. Think about it for me, Suns fan, 10 years of not caring at all, right? Like, I get to watch Devin Booker occasionally drop 50. It was awesome. But then, like, they started winning, and then they started making trades, and I'm like, oh, now they have to make, like, the finals, or I'm mad. Like, if they don't make a finals, it's a wasted year. And guess what? It's been a wasted year the past couple of years, so it's been miserable.
Yeah,
I hate success. I hate success with any team.
It's so stressful. Makes life so much worse, but it's great. That's why we love sports. But all right, that's all we got for y'all today. Hope y'all enjoyed it. Leave us a like, comment, share, subscribe if you have not already to the Dave Campbell's Texas Football YouTube page where we upload everything. Leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple or Spotify, wherever you're listening. We'll be back on Thursday to talk some more hoops, and we will talk to y'all then.